Viking dawn rituals began before the first light appeared over the fjords and mountains of Scandinavia, when warriors and farmers alike prepared for another day of survival in the harsh northern climate. The sound of wind through pine, forests and waves against rocky shores provided a constant backdrop to Viking morning routines that had remained unchanged for generations of Norse communities. Viking warriors woke naturally with the changing light of the seasons. Their internal rhythms adapted to the extreme variations in daylight that characterized northern European latitudes. During summer months, dawn came early with nearly continuous daylight, while winter mornings remained dark until late in the morning, requiring Vikings to adapt their schedules accordingly. Ancient Viking homes were designed to maximize warmth and protection from severe weather conditions, with thick walls made of stone, wood, and turf that provided insulation against freezing temperatures and howling winds. The central hearth remained burning throughout the night, tended by rotating family members who ensured that flames never died completely. Viking morning fire preparation involved carefully adding dried wood, peat, and other combustible materials to the overnight embers, gradually building the flames that would provide heat, light, and cooking capability for the day's activities. Fire was considered sacred in Norse culture and represented the power of the gods to provide life and protection. Ancient Viking clothing reflected both practical needs and social status, with garments made from wool, linen, and animal skins that provided protection against cold, wet conditions while allowing freedom of movement for work and combat. Morning dressing routines involved layering multiple garments to maintain body heat throughout the day. Viking men typically wore woolen tunics, linen undergarments, woolen trousers, and leather shoes or boots that provided protection and warmth during outdoor activities. Wealthy Vikings displayed their status through finer fabrics, intricate embroidery, and imported materials that demonstrated their success in trade or warfare. Ancient Viking women dressed in long woolen dresses, linen undergarments, and apron-like garments called hangerocks that were fastened with ornate brooches made of bronze, silver, or gold. These brooches served both functional and decorative purposes while indicating the woman's social position and family. Wealth. Viking personal hygiene practices were surprisingly sophisticated and included daily washing with soap made from animal fat and ash, regular grooming of hair and beards, and attention to dental care using twigs and other natural materials. Vikings took pride in their appearance and considered cleanliness important for both practical and social reasons. Ancient Viking breakfast preparation typically involved simple foods that could be quickly prepared and consumed before beginning the day's work or travel. Common breakfast items included porridge made from barley or oats, dried fish, preserved meat, and fermented dairy products that provided necessary nutrition and energy. Viking morning prayers and rituals honored the Norse gods who governed different aspects of daily life, with particular attention paid to Odin the Allfather, Thor the thunder god, and Freyr, who controlled fertility and prosperity. These spiritual practices helped Vikings feel connected to divine forces that could influence their success and survival. Ancient Viking weapon maintenance formed an essential part of morning routines for warriors and farmers alike, as weapons served both military and practical purposes in Viking society. Swords, axes, spears, and shields required daily attention to maintain their effectiveness and prevent damage from moisture and use. Viking tool preparation involved sharpening blades, checking handles and bindings, and ensuring that all equipment was ready for the day's activities, whether farming, crafting, trading, or raiding. Well-maintained tools were essential for survival and success in the challenging northern environment. Ancient Viking family coordination required careful planning and communication to ensure that all members understood their responsibilities and tasks for the day. Viking households functioned as economic units where every person contributed according to their abilities and social role. Viking morning discussions covered topics ranging from weather conditions and seasonal changes to planned activities and potential threats that might affect the community. Information sharing was crucial for survival in a world where conditions could change rapidly and unexpectedly. Ancient Viking livestock care began at dawn when animals needed to be fed, watered, and checked for health problems that could threaten valuable resources. Cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and horses provided food, materials, and transportation that were essential for Viking survival and prosperity. Viking seasonal preparations varied dramatically depending on the time of year and weather conditions, with different morning routines required for farming season, raiding season, winter survival, and festival periods. Vikings understood the importance of adapting their activities to natural cycles and environmental conditions. Ancient Viking community coordination involved communication between neighboring farms and settlements to share information about weather, threats, opportunities, and mutual assistance needs. Viking society depended on cooperation and reciprocity for survival in challenging conditions. Viking morning rituals concluded with final preparations for departure, whether for farming, crafting, trading, or raiding activities that would occupy the remainder of the day. These preparations included gathering tools, weapons, food, and other necessary supplies, while ensuring that homes and families were properly secured. Ancient Viking departure ceremonies might include prayers for protection and success, farewells to family members, and coordination with companions who would share the day's activities and challenges. Vikings understood that each departure might be permanent in a world filled with natural and human dangers. Viking morning rhythms reflected thousands of years of adaptation to Northern European environments and created sustainable patterns of daily life that enabled Norse communities to thrive despite harsh conditions and constant challenges. These routines provided structure and stability in an uncertain world. Viking longship construction represented one of the most advanced shipbuilding technologies in the medieval world and enabled Norse explorers to travel vast distances across oceans and up rivers that were inaccessible to other vessels. The process of building these magnificent ships required specialized knowledge, skilled craftsmanship, and community cooperation that could take months or years to complete. Viking shipwrights began longship construction by selecting appropriate trees that possessed the strength, flexibility, and size needed for different components of the vessel. Oak was preferred for the hull and structural elements due to its durability and resistance to water damage, while pine and other softwoods were used for masts, oars, and interior fittings. Ancient Viking tree selection involved careful evaluation of timber quality, grain patterns, and natural curves that could be incorporated into ship design without requiring extensive modification. Experienced shipbuilders could identify trees that would provide specific components such as curved ribs, straight planks, or bent stems that formed the distinctive longship profile. Viking wood preparation required months of seasoning and treatment to ensure the timber would remain stable and watertight under the stresses of ocean travel. Green wood was gradually dried using controlled methods that prevented cracking and warping while maintaining the strength. Characteristics needed for shipbuilding. Ancient Viking keel construction formed the foundation of longship design and determined the vessel's overall dimensions, sailing characteristics, and structural integrity. The keel was typically made from a single massive oak timber that could extend 30 meters or more in length and provide the backbone for the entire ship structure. Viking hull construction used overlapping planks called strakes that were fastened together with iron rivets and sealed with wool, moss, or tar to create watertight joints. This clinker-built construction method provided flexibility and strength while allowing the ship to bend and flex with wave action without breaking apart. Ancient Viking riveting techniques required skilled metalworkers who could heat iron rods to proper temperatures, shape them into rivets, and install them through precisely drilled holes in overlapping planks. Each rivet had to be perfectly fitted and sealed to prevent water infiltration that could sink the vessel. Viking frame installation involved shaping curved ribs that provided internal structure and determined the ship's cross-sectional shape. These frames were carefully fitted to the hull planking and secured with wooden pegs and lashings that distributed stress throughout the entire structure. Ancient Viking decking systems provided working surfaces for crew members while allowing access to storage areas and rowing benches. Deck planks were removable to permit cargo loading and bilge maintenance, and could be quickly rearranged to accommodate different types of voyages and activities. Viking mast installation required sophisticated engineering to support the enormous stresses generated by large square sails in strong winds. The mast step was carved directly into the keel structure, while the mast partner and rigging attachment points were reinforced with additional timber and iron fittings. Ancient Viking sail making utilized wool or linen fabrics that were woven, cut, and sewn into large rectangular sails capable of propelling fully loaded longships at impressive speeds. Sail design incorporated reinforcement strips, rope borders, and attachment points that could withstand the tremendous forces generated by ocean winds. Viking rigging systems included sophisticated arrangements of ropes, pulleys, and hardware that allowed crews to raise, lower, and adjust sails according to wind conditions and navigational requirements. Rigging maintenance was an ongoing responsibility that required constant attention to prevent dangerous failures during voyages. Ancient Viking oar systems provided backup propulsion when winds were unfavorable and enabled precise maneuvering in harbors, rivers, and coastal waters. Longships typically carried 15 to 30 pairs of oars that could be operated by crew members, sitting on sea chests that doubled as storage containers. Viking rowing techniques maximized efficiency and endurance during long voyages by coordinating stroke timing, rhythm, and power distribution among all crew members. Experienced crews could maintain steady rowing speeds for hours while navigating challenging conditions and maintaining ship control. Ancient Viking navigation methods combined astronomical observations, environmental indicators, and accumulated knowledge of currents, winds, and landmarks to guide longships across vast distances of open ocean. Viking navigators could determine direction, estimate position, and predict weather changes using traditional techniques passed down through generations. Viking compass alternatives included sun compasses, crystal sunstones, and careful observation of bird flight patterns, wave characteristics, and watercolor changes that indicated proximity to land or specific geographic features. These natural navigation aids enabled Vikings to explore previously unknown territories with remarkable accuracy. Ancient Viking ship launching ceremonies marked the completion of construction projects and invoked divine protection for vessels and crews who would face dangerous conditions during their voyages. These rituals included sacrificial offerings, prayers to sea gods, and community celebrations that honored the craftsmen and blessed the ship. Viking shipyard organization required coordination between multiple specialists, including woodworkers, metalworkers, rope makers, sail makers, and laborers who contributed different skills to the construction process. Large shipbuilding projects involved entire communities and represented significant investments of time, materials, and expertise. Ancient Viking maintenance schedules ensured that longships remained seaworthy throughout their operational lives by addressing wear, damage, and deterioration that resulted from exposure to saltwater, weather, and heavy use. Regular maintenance prevented catastrophic failures that could result in loss of ship, cargo, and crew. Viking winter storage involved hauling longships onto beaches or into specially constructed sheds where they could be protected from ice, storms, and other hazards that threatened vessels left in water during frozen months. Proper storage techniques preserved ships for decades of reliable service. Ancient Viking crew training prepared sailors for the physical and mental challenges of ocean voyages by teaching rowing techniques, sail handling, navigation skills, and emergency procedures. Experienced crews were essential for successful voyages and survival in dangerous conditions. Viking sailing seasons were carefully planned to take advantage of favorable weather conditions while avoiding storms, ice, and other hazards that made ocean travel extremely dangerous. Most longship voyages occurred during summer months when daylight was extended and weather patterns were relatively predictable. Viking farming practices formed the foundation of Norse society and provided the agricultural surplus that supported trade, exploration, and military activities throughout Scandinavia and beyond. Despite popular images of Vikings as primarily raiders and warriors, the vast majority of Norse people were farmers who worked the land using techniques adapted to northern European climate and soil conditions. Viking agricultural seasons followed natural cycles that determined planting, growing, harvesting, and storage activities throughout the year. The short growing season in northern latitudes required careful timing and intensive labor. During summer months, when crops had to be planted, tended, and harvested before winter frost destroyed agricultural production. Ancient Viking crop selection focused on hardy varieties that could survive in cool, wet conditions while providing essential nutrition for both humans and livestock. Barley was the primary grain crop because it matured quickly and tolerated poor soil conditions better than wheat, which was grown only in the most favorable locations. Viking soil preparation involved clearing forests, removing stones, and creating drainage systems that prevented waterlogging in fields prone to excessive moisture. This labor-intensive process often required several years to transform wild land into productive, agricultural areas suitable for cultivation. Ancient Viking plowing utilized simple wooden plows, pulled by oxen or horses, that broke up soil and created furrows for seed planting. These primitive implements were adequate for light soils, but struggled with heavy clay or rocky ground that characterized much of the Scandinavian landscape. Viking seed selection preserved the best grains from each harvest for planting in the following year, ensuring that crop varieties remained adapted to local growing conditions. Farmers carefully stored seed, grain in dry conditions to prevent sprouting or deterioration that would reduce germination rates. Ancient Viking fertilization methods included spreading animal manure, composted organic matter, and ash from wood fires to improve soil fertility and increase crop yields. These natural fertilizers provided essential nutrients while improving soil structure and water retention capabilities. Viking weeding and cultivation required constant attention during growing seasons to prevent wild plants from competing with crops for nutrients, water, and sunlight. Hand weeding and simple cultivation tools were used to maintain clean fields and maximize agricultural productivity. Ancient Viking harvesting involved cutting grain crops with sickles and scythes when plants reached optimal maturity, then gathering and bundling stalks for drying and threshing. Timing was critical because crops had to be harvested before autumn rains and frost damaged the grain quality. Viking threshing separated grain from stalks using flails and beating sticks that knocked seeds from dried plant material. This labor-intensive process was often performed by entire families working together to process the harvest before winter storage became necessary. Ancient Viking grain storage utilized specially constructed buildings and containers that protected harvested crops from moisture, pests, and theft. Proper storage techniques were essential for survival during long winter months when fresh food was unavailable. Viking livestock management included caring for cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and horses that provided food, materials, and labor for agricultural and household activities. Animals were essential components of Viking farming systems and required daily attention throughout the year. Ancient Viking cattle served multiple purposes, including milk production, meat, leather, and draft power for plowing and transportation. Cattle were valuable assets that represented wealth and status within Viking communities, and their care required significant knowledge and resources. Viking sheep provided wool for clothing and textiles, milk for dairy products, and meat for food during winter months. Sheep were well adapted to northern climates and could graze on marginal land that was unsuitable for crop production. Ancient Viking goat herding utilized animals that could browse on shrubs and weeds while providing milk, meat, and hides for various household uses. Goats were particularly valuable in mountainous areas where other livestock could not survive harsh conditions. Viking pig farming involved raising animals that converted agricultural waste and forest products into valuable protein sources. Pigs were fed kitchen scraps, acorns, and other materials that would otherwise be wasted, making them efficient converters of marginal resources. Ancient Viking horse breeding produced animals that served as transportation, draft power, and military mounts essential for Viking mobility and warfare. Horses were expensive to maintain, but provided capabilities that no other animals could match. Viking pasture management included rotating, grazing areas to prevent overuse, and maintaining meadows that provided hay for winter feeding. Proper pasture care ensured that livestock remained healthy and productive throughout the year. Ancient Viking dairy production involved milking cows, sheep, and goats to provide fresh milk and processed dairy products such as cheese, butter, and fermented drinks. Dairy products were important protein sources and could be preserved for extended periods. Viking meat preservation utilized smoking, salting, and drying techniques that prevented spoilage and provided protein sources during winter months when fresh meat was unavailable. Preserved meat was essential for survival and could be stored for extended periods. Ancient Viking wool processing involved shearing sheep, cleaning fleeces, spinning wool into thread, and weaving textiles for clothing and household use. Wool production was primarily women's work and provided essential materials for family survival. Viking leather production required skinning animals, treating hides with various substances, and processing materials into leather goods including clothing, containers, and equipment. Leather was an essential material that served numerous purposes in Viking society. Ancient Viking farm organization coordinated the activities of family members and laborers to ensure that all necessary tasks were completed efficiently and effectively. Viking farms operated as self-sufficient economic units that produced most necessities for family survival. Viking seasonal labor patterns concentrated intensive work during summer months when crops required planting, cultivation, and harvesting, while winter months involved maintenance, repair, and indoor activities. Labor distribution reflected the demands of northern agricultural cycles. Ancient Viking tool maintenance included caring for plows, harrows, sickles, scythes, and other implements that were essential for successful farming. Proper tool care ensured that equipment remained functional and effective throughout demanding agricultural seasons. Viking farm planning involved decisions about crop rotation, field preparation, livestock breeding, and resource allocation that affected long-term productivity and sustainability. Successful farming required careful planning and adaptation to changing conditions and opportunities.